right, Lee. So have you listened back to last week's episode?
No, I haven't actually.
Interesting, because I listened back to it, and do you know what I noticed? There was no improvement in audio from your end, despite me wearing headphones, as you've been going on about. So apparently, it's not the headphones.
Okay, that's odd.
It is odd, yeah. You think, yeah? Well, yeah. Anyway,
what does the quality sound like when we're sat here talking now?
I mean, you sound tremendously dull, but that's probably nothing to do with Zoom or headphones or anything. It generally sounds fine. I think, yeah, I don't really know if you cut in or out or have you. I'm too busy concentrating on two screens at the same time. I can't listen to your voice and I don't know, Jim Ross or Michael Cole, whoever it is, at the same time.
Well, I've noticed the difference in that I can't hear myself playing back through your screen. So,
well, as long as you're happy, that's the main thing. That is what's most important. Right, guys, we're on to Chris Jericho versus Edge from WrestleMania 26. And do you know what? This is a first match that I was there watching. I was there in person. So what I've got here is a genuine program from WrestleMania 26. Obviously, people are listening to this can't see this, but I'm holding it up to Lee. It's the WrestleMania 26 program. On the front, it's got a picture of left to right, Shawn Michaels, Triple H, John Cena, Undertaker, and Batista. And then on the back, it's got the Hall of Fame class of 2010. And look, I open up to the inside, and I've already got ready the Edge versus Chris Jericho match. Now, I think we probably need more, because this will take me about 20 seconds to read what happened, the overview of the match. So I think we'll get started anyway. So for anyone who is doing this, and no one's ever told us that they actually watch along to the match at the same time on the network, but let's just pretend that someone is. We're WrestleMania 26, March 28th, 2010. Start of the Jericho Edge chapter. It's 2 hours and 8 minutes exactly. We're going to play in 3, 2, 1, go. Right, so here it says, World Heavyweight Champion Chris Jericho versus Edge for the World Heavyweight Championship. All was going well when Jericho and Edge were WWE's unstoppable, unified WWE Tag Team Champions. But when Edge got injured, Jericho quickly moved on, calling out his former partner as frail, weak, and a pathetic excuse for a human being. What an absolute savage. I mean, that's the one thing that I know, obviously, WWE is PG, but very rarely do they speak like people speak in real life. Like, no one calls anyone a prick, for example, which I think in real life you probably would, wouldn't you, in such a scenario?
Absolutely.
Or tell them to piss off or stop being a knob, that sort of stuff. Jericho's war of words made Edge's surprise return at the Royal Rumble all the more satisfying. Have you seen Royal Rumble 2010?
No, I don't think I have.
So Edge goes out injured with an Achilles tendon injury. I want to say about July of 2009, and he's on the shelf. They're saying I think they're saying for 9 months or a year. So there's no expectation whatsoever that he's going to come back at the Royal Rumble in 2010. I don't remember it even being remotely suggested. And he comes out as a mystery participant, and the roof nearly blows off, as they say. It's a hell of a reaction. Have you ever seen the reaction to John Cena returning at the Royal Rumble in 2008?
Yes, I have seen.
That's classic, because he, again, has been out injured. No one's expecting him back. They've kept it undercover. And I think it's at MSG, if I remember correctly. And initially, they pop massive because it's huge. And then they remember that they don't like Cena. So he goes, yeah, boo. Whereas I seem to remember that the Edge return was overwhelmingly positive. Jericho's war of words made Edge's surprise return at the Royal Rumble all the more satisfying, eliminating his former partner to be the last man standing. Chris Jericho has warned bad things happen when Edge gets involved in his life. Will Jericho's warning remain true, or will the Rated R superstar make his comeback complete by capturing the World Heavyweight Championship? Edge posing there. I do remember this. I remember this big circular video screen thing hanging from the ceiling. I remember that being there. I remember Randy Orton posing next to it during his triple threat match with Ted DiBiase and Cody Rhodes. I remember Jericho and Edge. Fairly far up. I'm trying to figure out. I'm fairly sure the hard cam angle that we're looking at now, I would say I'm over the right shoulder of the person filming. That's my estimate, because I remember looking at an angle towards the entrance, which I assume is to the left of the hard cam. So what we're seeing now, that's pretty much where I'm sat, give or take 50 or 100 metres. We were fairly far up. It was me, my wife at the time, and Ollie, who was only about 18 months old, bless him. It was my 30th birthday, and I think I'd mentioned about I'd quite like to go to WrestleMania at some point, and then I'd mentioned about it being Undertaker's retirement match and how it'd be quite cool to go. And bless her, she surprised me with 2 weeks in America for my 30th, culminating in arriving at Phoenix for WrestleMania, and we were very nearly late, not because we were particularly running late. I'd got on the time. I think I'd seen start time, and I maybe thought that was start of like the pre-show, and the pre-show is like an hour or two.
Yeah.
So we got to the venue, to the car park, maybe an hour before showtime. By the time we got to our seat, it was probably 15 minutes before showtime, and I thought maybe pre-show was about to start. But I remember walking in, and Yoshitatsu was winning the pre-show battle royal, and then the next thing, once we sat down, was the start of the show. So we could have potentially missed something.
So I'm assuming Ollie didn't have to have his own seat.
No, I think he sat on my lap throughout, if I remember correctly. Fairly sure he was, yeah.
So just one thing, that the belt that Chris Jericho had there, it looks very much like the Ric Flair.
The big gold belt. Yeah. So you missed all this time period. So I think we've mentioned on previous podcasts that there was a undisputed champion after the WCW and WWF belts were unified by Chris Jericho, funnily enough, at Vengeance 2001. Then summer of 2002, Brock Lesnar becomes exclusive champion to SmackDown, and Eric Bischoff just decides that there's going to be a second, this is storyline obviously, decides that there's going to be a second title. He gets the big gold belt out and gives it to Triple H. So Triple H becomes the first, what they then call the World Heavyweight Champion. And that's the belt and the lineage that Jericho and Edge find themselves feuding over here 7.5 years later. Yeah, I always felt
that big fan of both of these guys.
Yeah. I mean, Jericho, I like him, and he's talented, and a lot of the stuff he does is good. I don't know if I put him at the level that both he himself clearly believes he's at, and other people do. But I'm not saying he's not good. I'm not daft enough. I mean, he's reinvented himself repeatedly over 25 years now and stayed relevant even at the age now of in his early 50s. He's until relatively recently the AEW World Heavyweight Champion, still gets a good reaction, still puts his opponents over well. So I'm not going to dispute his qualities. I've just never enjoyed him as much as some people do.
Which leads him well. So what do you think his rating out of 10 is on Cage Match?
For Jericho, I don't know if it'll be mega high, because whilst he has been involved in a lot of really good matches, I think he's a little bit marmitey. So I think there's some people who just really don't like him, compared to someone like a Kurt Angle, where everyone thinks he's brilliant, even if they're not necessarily a fan per se. So I'm going to go a little bit lower than some of the others. I'm going to go 7.8.
One of the highest I've seen, 9.53 out of 10.
Oh, shows what I know. I'll get my coat. My apologies to Chris Jericho. If you're listening, then my apologies.
I think his highest was something like 9.7. Right. Probably around about this sort of time, maybe.
Okay.
And Edge is just below him at 9.37 out of 10. So out of all the matches we've done, this is definitely the
highest collective.
Yeah.
This is higher than Warrior versus Andre, is it?
Slightly, yeah.
Okay. I mean, that the Warrior versus Andre bit had already finished 5 minutes ago when we watched that one, hadn't it? I think we might have selected slightly better if we'd realised, because I think we selected that one thinking there'd be a bit more in it compared to the 30-second disqualification matches they've been having around the house show loop. But anyway, okay, fair enough. Yeah, the Jericho is quality. Edge, I quite like Edge. I really enjoyed a lot of his early work from like 98 to the early 2000s, and I was pleased for him to some degree when he finally made that jump to world heavyweight title level. I felt that he'd worked hard for a long time, come back from a lot of injuries, and I felt that he deserved it. And he wasn't one of these where, I mean, everyone works for it, don't get me wrong. Clearly, your Batistas and your John Cenas and your Brock Lesnar's all work hard for it, but you can kind of see that they're on that path, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Someone like Edge, you feel he's had to knuckle down, and again, the work. I'm not going to take anything away from those guys; they've worked just as hard. But maybe I got a little bit more involved in Edge's ascendancy to that point than, say, Batista's, who again I think is great, but it was always pretty obvious he was on his way to being the world champion.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So,
go on.
After the Royal Rumble mentioned before, so obviously Jericho's not champion at that point because he's in the Rumble, coming second to Edge. At the following month's pay-per-view, the Elimination Chamber, Undertaker's defending the World Championship in the chamber against 5 other people, and Jericho wins the title from them, setting up both this, but also setting up Taker versus Michaels, because the previous year at WrestleMania 25, Michaels and Undertaker had what many consider to be one of the best matches ever. We watched it, didn't we, in Series 1?
Yes.
And Michaels wanted a rematch at this year's WrestleMania. Taker said no originally, and then the thing that finally made him change his mind was Michaels interfering in Elimination Chamber and costing Taker the title against Jericho by coming out from underneath the ring and super kicking him.
Oh yeah, I've seen that.
But my overriding memory of that is I'm a massive Michaels fan. Out of everyone, probably he is my favourite all time. I think he's great. But sometimes he looks like he's asleep, doesn't he? He's trying to sell emotion and gravitas and what have you. But I think with his lazy eye, if you get the wrong camera angle, it looks like his eyes are closed and he's asleep. So he's super kicked Taker, costing him the world title, and he looks like he's fallen asleep, stood up afterwards. That's my primary memory of that match.
I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah. Cool. Right, so they're brawling on the outside here. Jericho in pretty good shape there, actually. Jericho, I mean, obviously compared to the average person in the street, he's always been in phenomenal shape, but he's never been a body guy, and Edge even less so. I mean, around this period there, Edge looks, to be honest, almost like a very normal guy you might see in the street, doesn't he?
Well, a normal guy you might see in the gym, maybe.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, normal guys in the street probably have a shirt on for a start, and
not single open Mac.
Well, yeah. So obviously Edge would retire only a year after this. So he, do you know what happens in this match? I don't want to spoil the result for you.
No, I don't.
Okay, well, I'll leave that. A year later, he's defending the World Heavyweight Championship against Alberto Del Rio, who's won that year's Rumble. He wins it, but then gets his diagnosis from some tests he's been having around that time in only, I think, literally a couple of days later, and has to vacate the world title and retire on SmackDown, becoming, I think, the second person ever to retire as World Heavyweight Champion. Although I'm struggling to remember who the first person is. I think it's someone from back in the day, like olden NWA or something like that. I think he's definitely the first person in the modern era that people will generally know who they are, who retired as a world champion.
Wow.
Be interesting to know if they'd had his diagnosis or prognosis a couple of days earlier. You've got to assume they would have dropped the title to Alberto Del Rio at WrestleMania, especially seeing as Del Rio that was being built up as a future face of the company. He'd won the Rumble. They were pushing him hard. He was talking a lot about it's been his destiny, and it was something of a surprise when Edge then went over clean. You'd assume they'd have just put the title on Del Rio at that year's WrestleMania if they'd have known what was happening.
There's Becky Lynch relatively recently, although she didn't retire, did she?
True, yeah. That's probably the closest similar thing, isn't it? I suppose that's just a vacation, though, isn't it? And tons of people have vacated. Shawn Michaels himself has vacated most of the titles he's won, hasn't he?
Yeah.
He's never particularly enjoyed doing the job, Michaels, has he? A fairly high proportion of them.
There you go.
Okay, all right, go for the code breaker earlier on. That's called signaling your finish. You tease your finish early on just to show the audience. That's a move that might happen later. You're priming them to react to it when it potentially does. Right, I'm trying to think what else happened at WrestleMania that year. Obviously, the big match at the end of it is Michael's retirement match. The main reason that I wanted to go. It was Michael's last ever match until he came out of retirement for the Classic in Saudi Arabia. D-Generation X versus the Brothers of Destruction, which is possibly one of the worst matches of all time, which is a real shame because you've got some bona fide legends in there. And yeah, but I suppose that's what happens when none of them are regular wrestlers. One of them has been retired for nearly a decade, probably had a total combined. I mean, probably Kane had by far the most matches in the preceding decade out of all of them. Undertaker and Triple H probably had 10 or 20 matches over the previous decade, each. Michaels had none. Kane would have had a number, but not a crazy amount.
Yeah.
You a fan of Jericho and Edge? I suppose didn't really see them, did you, at the time?
No, I mean, obviously, on a lot of the stuff we've been watching back, I've seen a lot of Edge. I do like him. I've not seen much of Jericho at all.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, Edge features in current wrestling, so I get to see him quite a bit.
Interestingly, obviously Edge won the Rumble this year. Supposedly, I don't know how true it is. One of the main reasons he won it was he went to Vince and just suggested it would make sense. But that's a prime example of the difference between the current crop, the current generation, the gratitude era, if you will, where they're just happy to be there and want to be part of the show, versus someone like Edge who just goes and gets in Vince's ear and goes, Vince, I think you should put me over at the Rumble and put the title on me at Mania. Fair play to him.
You don't get it if you don't ask.
Exactly. I don't know exactly how true that story is, but
I hope it's true.
That's one thing I'm particularly trying to teach my kids. You don't ask, you don't get. Classic example of that. Last year we were parasailing in France, and Jamie, my youngest son, or middle son, sorry, said, "Do you think he'll let me drive the boat?" And I went, "You don't ask, you don't get." So Jamie went up and asked if he could drive the boat, and the guy let him drive it for like 20 or 30 minutes.
Brilliant.
And I said afterwards, mate, valuable lesson in life. The worst he could have possibly said was no, and it wouldn't have been a big deal.
You're still in the same situation, yeah.
Exactly. He's not going to kick you off the boat, or you're not going to get in trouble. If you ask nicely, you probably get a fairly high proportion of the things you ask for. If you don't ask, or you complain, or you whatever else, then you probably won't get them.
It's one of the first things I teach new sales guys is sometimes you just got to ask for the deal.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Do all the hard work leading up to it, but sometimes you just got to ask.
Yeah, exactly. Sometimes they're ready to give you the deal, the money, the what have you. Just some people don't necessarily. Yeah. And that's very much the same in fitness as well. I know a lot of fit pros who essentially see sales as a dirty word. They don't want to seem salesy. But I'm like, you've got someone there who's got a problem, a thing that you can help them with. You believe your program to be good. You're doing them a disservice if you don't help them take that last little step. But we've all had, I suppose, what we consider to be bad experience of salesness, and I can see people's concern about coming across that way. Well, Jericho code breaker there. Now, I don't tell me that's it. Surely not. You got any interesting facts? I've noticed what you've done over the last few weeks is you've segued from like quiz questions to just their top 5 opponents as a cage match. Is that you just getting a little bit lazy, is it?
No, it's more along the lines of I was struggling to ascertain what was a difficult question and what was an easy question. You were answering the questions I was asking quite easily.
Yeah, I'm pretty good though, aren't I? So that's probably.
If they're purely statistical, then it's more an educated guess on your behalf. So it's still giving you the opportunity to show how your vast knowledge base.
Oh yeah. And also, it's easy for you just to Google cage matches 2 minutes before we come on Zoom, isn't it?
Of course, that's part of it as well, yeah.
Go on then. So Jericho's top 5 opponents. Yeah. So most of his, by far the longest part of his career was in WWE. So we're looking 99 to a few years ago. Maybe Cena?
No.
No, okay. Benoit?
Number 5.
Okay. Edge and/or Christian?
1 and 2.
Okay, right, cool. Who else was a big Mysterio?
No.
Who would Jericho have faced? I can think of people he's had famous feuds with. Probably won't have faced more than 5 or 10 or 20 times.
What's interesting with Jericho's is, and I don't see this often, is all the top 5 are within 8 matches of each other.
Wow.
There isn't one standout. They're all quite close.
And what sort of numbers are they? Like a couple of hundred or something? Or
no, Christian's 105. Benoit was 5th. He's 97.
So Benoit would have won if he hadn't have, killed his wife and kid and then committed suicide, wouldn't he? Because they'd have got more. They'd have got more than 8 matches in. You'd assume, wouldn't you?
Now he's regretting it.
He didn't think about that, did he? So who else am I missing there? Maybe even someone like Kane.
No.
No, go on, pass. Who we got?
4, Batista.
Okay, right, fair enough.
3rd, Triple H.
Yeah, I probably should have got Triple H, to be fair. I'm slightly surprised at Batista, but sometimes they have like a number of house show runs that are 20, 30 matches, and you don't need many of them. It soon adds up.
Out of all of those, Christian is the only one that he's beat more times than he's lost.
Okay, yeah, that probably makes sense. I'd have thought, yeah. Right.
Edge's top 5?
I do, very much so. Possibly similar. So, Jericho?
No.
Benoit?
No.
Mysterio?
No.
Triple H?
No.
Oh, man alive, I'm rubbish at this.
The share 1.
Who did you say? Batista?
Yeah, number 4.
Maybe someone like Test or something like that?
No.
I'm struggling. Pass.
So, Devon Dudley?
Okay, yeah, of course, because you've got all the TLC matches and the like, yeah. Oh, remember Jeff Hardy? Jeff Hardy
is number 1.
Yes.
And that's the clue for number 3 as well.
Matt Hardy?
Yeah.
Not the same guy, remember? Brothers, different people.
Yeah, because that did confuse me how they were both in
there. John Cena?
Yes.
So Devon's in there, but not Bubba Ray?
He might have been number 6.
Yeah. You wouldn't have thought there'd been much difference between them. You'd assume most of their matches would have been in tag matches, but yeah, makes sense. I was going to say that it was absolutely fascinating.
Well, they're
right. I think that's the finish. I think that's the finish. Jericho's just hitting with the code breaker. I think that's the finish. Just spoiled the result for you.
Cheers.
Yeah. There you go. So that surprised me as well, similar to a year later when Alberto Del Rio was being built up as someone fulfilling his destiny, and you assumed he was going over at Mania and didn't. With this one, Edge returns at the Rumble. He's set for a feud with his former partner who's been besmirching him all this time, and then Jericho just beats him clean. Slightly surprising. Oh well. What question are you about to ask, sorry?
I was going to say, do you want to have a go at their alter egos?
Well, very much so, yeah. So Jericho
I've got 1, 2. I've got 4.
And these aren't just nicknames. These are actual different alter egos.
There's a separate section for nicknames. These are actual alter egos.
Wow, Jericho. Okay. Are we including stuff that like he's dressed up as them once, or is it something he's regularly been billed as? Because I have a feeling, did he dress up as some of the cruiserweights when he was in WCW at one point? I'm going to have to pass.
So I've got Corazon de Leon.
Oh, yeah, Lionheart in Spanish when he was in Mexico.
Well, 2 of the 4 are, there's that, but then there's AKA Lionheart, AKA Lion Do. Okay. And then there's one more, Superliga.
Superliga, yeah. So have you heard of Jushin Liger?
No. Yes, I have.
Yeah, Jushin Thunder Liger. So did you ever used to watch New Japan and World of Sport on Eurosport in about 1994? Did you ever see that?
Yeah,
I remember loving Liger. So Jericho was a masked, basically a white version, like an all-white costume version of Jushin Liger called Super Liger. Now, I think it only lasted one show because he didn't do very well in it, mainly because he found, from what I remember from his autobiography, he found the outfit very restrictive, couldn't breathe, didn't necessarily do really badly. But if you're saying you're a better version of one of the greatest wrestlers that's ever lived, you need to really go out there and perform, and perhaps didn't. Oh, Jericho's about to give... Edge is about to give Jericho a spear on the table. So we've still got one alter ego left?
No, that's it for him.
Okay, cool.
And then Edge got 3.
Sexton Hardcastle?
Yeah.
There's a match, I've mentioned about how potentially this might pan out with random, like, WCW worldwide tapings. I think it's Edge as Sexton Hardcastle versus, I think it might be Sting from some random WCW Saturday night in, like, 1994. But I might be confusing that with somebody else, actually. He's definitely in WCW in about 94, 96, something like that. What else? He's got another couple of gimmicks. He's always been Edge, apart from nicknames when it's in WWE. Pass.
So, got Adam Impact.
I was considering Adam something, but that does ring a very vague bell. Okay, cool.
And then this one, which to me sounds like there was a porn movie with an action hero.
Okay.
Damon Stryker.
Damon Stryker. Sexton Hardcastle didn't come across as a little bit porn movie, action movie to you. That was the one that jumped out.
It's too obvious.
I was about to say too obvious. I like subtlety in my action porn.
Damon Stryker sounds like when someone's tried to think of a cool name.
Yeah. Well, fundamentally, that's what wrestling names are, isn't it? Someone's tried to think of a cool name.
Yeah.
You've just tried to put together like a real name and a made-up surname, or vice versa. Right. So are we now just left with one match? Are we? So
Sting and Goldberg.
Yes, Sting and Goldberg. We haven't ascertained which Sting and Goldberg match it will be. I'll have a quick Google, actually. I feel there's some... There we go. Sting versus Goldberg, Slamboree 1999. They battled in a titanic contest. That is, it's a battle for the ages, apparently. Epic contest. Wow. I'm looking forward to that now. That's quite exciting.
So what's that, Slamboree?
That one is Slamboree 1999. Now, you have got an episode of Monday Nitro from September 98 where Goldberg is the champion defending against Sting. However, I'm 99% sure that will just go to disqualification or count out. So we probably are... I mean, they described it as titanic and a battle for the ages and epic in the first handful of lines on Google. So I think we've got to go for that one, haven't we?
Yeah.
Deal. And then we'll have to see if we can make it remotely feasible that we make a second round work. Oh, they're just showing the recap here of the Battle Royal, aren't they? I think the one that Yoshitatsu. So I'm walking into the building literally at this point, watching there Yoshitatsu clothesline Zack Ryder out. I'm at the top of the steps walking in. Right, guys, if you are listening to this, and I can see the download figures, and whilst, we probably aren't going to be challenging people like Jericho for their podcast viewership, there are a number of you, and it's fairly steady week in, week out, so I'm assuming there are people that enjoy this possibly as much as we do, which would be nice. Let us know. Either go on, I think you can comment on the webpage itself, thegreatestwrestlingshowever.com, or if you go on Facebook, just search The Greatest Wrestling Show Ever, you'll find it straight away. Each week when we put this out on podcast, there is a video version of it appears on there. Feel free to comment on there. It'd be nice to hear from you guys. If you're not enjoying it, that's okay as well. Probably don't tell us, but carry on listening, and either way, tell your friends.